Good evening. How are you? I didn't get a chance to do a walk and talk today between cases I'm working on, but also then I was invited to appear with R.A. Melber to discuss what I would call the kidnapping of migrant workers without proven cause because our president is a bigot. How about that? And that those who cheer the fact that we are getting rid of this scapegoat for so many white American males, that justifies it, and it doesn't. And they did this, taking them to a place where they shaved their heads and forced them to wear a white t-shirt and white pants. And the people who have been doing this and abusing them in this way at a place that's known for torture are wearing masks, so you can't see who they are. Now, let's run this back a little bit. I have talked before about John Adams and the alien and sedition laws, and they were separated. The alien laws were for the president, John Adams, to have some control over who was here. They were very careful about that, and the concern was that the French were not to the liking of John Adams. The sedition laws had more to do with shutting up Thomas Jefferson's allies so that the Federalist, John Adams, could prevail. Now, run ahead, and the statute having to do with aliens gets modified somewhat and is used. And many are familiar with how we locked up those from Japan and Germany and Italy, but in significant numbers those from Japan during World War II. That marked a shame and a disgrace for America. Well, we have a new shame and disgrace. And it is that we have people who are classified by the government as migrant workers. The truth is, we don't know that. Number two, the government says that they're part of a gang that seeks to attack the United States. It's a predatory incursion. And the funny thing on the way to flying these people out of the United States is that no one had any hearings to determine this is true. And there are a couple of examples of that. And those of you who may have studied Aristotle had a square of logic. A universal affirmative, all men are smart, versus a particular negative, Johnny is dumb and he is a man. And in this case, what you have is all the people they seized are part of a vicious gang, but then, and we know that in part because they wear tattoos, but we have a 23-year-old that was seized who has a tattoo, and it's of his mother and his family. Not usually what you would find a gang member. In short, it means that in the notion of due process, fundamental fairness, I say, I believe that you are a gang leader. And then I have some proof to prove it. None of that was required. People, I guess, were just taken out of the country based on their surname. And they've also taken out of the country ignoring their status, which would have allowed them to stay. It's a little bit like the Khalil case out of Colombia, where they came to him and said, you've been protesting on behalf of the Palestinians, and you have a temporary student visa, and we're kicking you out of the country. And then his wife, who was 8 months pregnant, said, no, that's not the case. He has a green card. He's a permanent resident. He's married to myself. I'm a citizen. Doesn't matter. And they spirited him off to Louisiana. And they tell the court that they don't want to release him and they're not going to give information and so on. So where does that leave us? Well, I think a simple way to understand it is that Trump wants to do what Trump wants to do, whatever the law, whatever the facts, but especially the symbolism to those who support this crazed individual who occupies the West Wing. Now, there are statutes that allow certain things to happen under certain circumstances. One is the Alien Enemies Act. It goes back to 1798. It was something that John Adams wanted and got in an earlier incarnation, the Alien and Sedition laws. And the Alien laws were about getting rid of people who may be sympathetic to the French, because he, John Adams, was not. The sedition laws had to do if anybody criticized the government, they could be put in jail. Now, John Adams was only interested in those who said bad things about him, and the act was not used otherwise, that is, involving aliens. And it's only been used in its reinvented state in the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. We're all familiar with the shameful existence of the Japanese held in internment camps. So this is a little bit like that. We pick people, we say that they're migrants, we say they belong to this gang, and we spirit them off to some other country where they're going to be tortured. Now, what is the law that the government started using? Trump's people. Section 21 of Title 50, and I'm looking at it because I want to get it right. It says, whenever there is a declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government. That's the statute. But we're not at war between the United States and any foreign nation or government. So what do we got there? No, there's another reason. Or invasion or predatory incursion. Well, are we saying that these people that we took off are part of an invasion? And what's the predatory incursion? Are these people who believe they're trying to get asylum here because they were tortured someplace else? So isn't this backwards? Now, if we have a declared war and we have an invasion or predatory incursion, and it is by any foreign nation or government, what foreign nation or government is after us? None. Venezuela? Any place? No, nobody. So the president has to make a public proclamation that fits this statute, but he can't, because there's no declared war, there's no invasion, there's no predatory incursion by some other nation state. Still, we go forward. Now, the other interesting thing about this statute is that it allows the president to direct the conduct consistent with this statute. So it's presented to the court, and there are people sitting in custody ready to leave America for some undefined place. And on Friday to Saturday, Trump and people try to move this thing along, trying to keep it as quiet as possible so they can get away with it. But a judge hears the case, and here's a case brought by the ACLU, in which they say a migration is not an invasion. They say migrants are wrongly named as terrorists and invaders. So what is Trump doing? If this is not lawful, he's kidnapping migrants. And he's sending them to a place to be tortured, and he knows that's what's going to happen there, and they're going to stay for a year. So why are we in this box? It is because on several levels, this is a way of eliminating some portion of the non-white population, because there are those who believe that we need to be all white. We have too many people from foreign nations. It's going to compromise America. And when some people heard that a judge said, if you're putting people on a plane, stop it. If they're in the air, have them come back. My order is that you have not satisfied this statute, and I'm issuing a temporary restraining order to stop anything from happening until we have a chance to study this more. Now, like juvenile delinquents or mobsters, these characters seize their opportunities and they take them, meaning that they send off the planes with these migrants, and they don't care what the court has to say. Now, today in court, Monday, the judge asked the government, tell me, were you disobeying my order? What were you doing? They refused to answer his questions. And they said he didn't have the authority to interfere with them. But wait, the authority that the government would claim for the executive branch is this statute. And they haven't satisfied the statute. So they don't have any authority to do this. And their argument is, in a duel between the judiciary and the executive, we win. Our authority is better than their authority. Papers, paper, rock, scissors. And but we can do better than paper, rock, scissors because the statute says what may happen, and we have no declared war. So what does the government say? Well, it says to some reporters, the judge doesn't know what he's talking about. The president has an inherent power to do what he's doing, and he's doing what he's doing because he has that power. And so, pound sand. And they tried to claim that the judge had issued an order that they thought had more specifics in it, but it was limited by a second printed order that didn't have all the wordage that the original had. And the court went like that. Now, let me give you, for those of you who don't have the experience, a judge often gives an order in court. He sometimes asks the parties, whoever wins or loses, to write that order. The judge looks at it, revises it, may have a hearing about it. That's not what happened here. The judge issued it orally and soon afterwards had a printed order. And they tried to claim, well, the printed order applied, and it was difficult to understand. Then they decided that was a bullshit defense. And so they came up with something better, and that was the president has inherent authority to do whatever he wants to do. And that was their thinking on the subject. So how important is this case? There is a case that all law students study and practicing lawyers are familiar with, particularly if they deal with litigation involving the statutes of Congress. And how does it go? Simply put, going back a long time to Marshall being upsetting Jefferson, if you will, even though they had a relationship, a familial relationship. And it goes like this. The court can decide if the legislature passes a bill or the president does something if it satisfies the Constitution. If it doesn't, the court can say that, and then we all have to modify our behavior to fit that decision. That's Marbury against Madison. Apologies to lawyers who know it's more detailed, but that's the gist of it. So what do we have here? We have a court, looks at an action in the light of a statute that the government is claiming applies, and says, no, you can't do that, and says, stop the music. Wait, let's study it. Let's have an argument about it. Let me see if there's anything at all to your claim. And they say, oh, you bet, Your Honor. And then they go off and fly these planes with these migrants offshore. And it's in international waters, they say. The plane's in international waters. Who knows whether it was or wasn't when they claimed it was. But there will be details to this effect. And there's a reporter from Axios who actually put together the timeline that's being widely distributed, so you can find it anywhere. And it doesn't look good for the government from that. So they have to basically say, Trump is a dictator and he decides what to do, notwithstanding a statute that gave him limited authority under certain circumstances that other presidents have respected and made a hash of it, if you want to go back to World War II and the internment camps of the Japanese. So next, at the hearing today, the judge asked questions and the government refused to answer any of those questions. And they gave bullshit about security. He said, well, I have clearance. You can tell the judge. Nope, I'm not going to tell you. And they complained about the difference between his oral and written order. So at first it looked like he was going to give it a little time to think about the order. But basically, these people were improperly resistant to the authority of the court. You could say contempt. And the judge is going to issue something on Tuesday, or so it appears. And then where to? Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. Now the White House goes around cackling, saying, oh, this Supreme Court, they're going to prove what we're doing. I'm not so sure that Roberts and I think basically we have 5 people that would think this was wrong, and maybe more. You can never tell with the other 4, the Alito branch. And you could say that they have 6. And I think it goes down harder with Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, after the very public statement by Trump about, thank you, thanks again. Like he could depend on him to jump like a puppet to whatever Trump wanted. Why is this all important? If our executive doesn't follow the law as found by the courts, we have a constitutional crisis, because the system of 3 branches of government, executive, judiciary, and legislative, are meant to balance each other by exercising their prerogatives. Judges exercise this prerogative. They say, how can one judge do that? Well, that's the way the system works. You have one judge, right? You can have a 3-person judge panel to review what he said. You can have an en banc, that is, all the judges in the court may be invited to and participate in the argument. You can go to the Supreme Court, and it has to be a federal question of some sort, or a division between the circuits around the country. And under those, I'm not sure the Supreme Court would ever take the case, in the sense of they might defer to a court of appeals if it goes there next. A contempt citation against any of them is an appealable item. So there are several paths we can follow. We are on notice that the passivity of elected officials and others has been dangerous to our republic and to our individual franchise and vote. When laws are not followed and rules are not followed and the Constitution is ignored, you create a situation that's been predicted since our country was born in 1776. Because what happens is it's chaos. Chaos is a middle distance between the order of a democracy and a republic and a dictatorship or oligarchy run by a few people. And the oligarchy sometimes disappears in favor of a dictator with a strong military to get people to do whatever he wants. Elections are canceled, or they're just show elections. They're not real. That's where we are in this tunnel of deceit, overreaching, and punishment to these poor migrants. Think about it. You are wearing a tattoo honoring your mom, and these guys take you as belonging to a terrorist gang that has nothing to do with America. And as a result of that, I send you off, I shave your head, I put you in certain clothes, and I leave you there. And you never had a chance to tell a judge, hey, this tattoo, there's nothing about this tattoo that has anything to do with the gang. It's about my mom. That's where we are. Due process, and we're going to be hearing more of this because it's not respected by Trump or any of the people they're with. I think I said in the discussion with Ari tonight that anything that gets in the way, they will run over. It's not that they misunderstand or are mistaken about the law. It is that they don't care what the law says. They are going to bully their way through it and get whatever they want any way they can. And so that's why they've been changing their arguments. That's why they don't want to give evidence. And that's why we're in a conflict in the court system right now. And they've been losing court cases, and it's having an effect in the polling. People are being educated to it. Maybe not those people in the legislature and the Congress, and that's a bunch of worthless people, you know that? But the citizens get it. The citizens are smart, and politicians treat them as if they're dumb, and they're not. You don't have to have gone to school to understand when you're being had, and they know they're being had. And the question is, who allows themselves to help them mount an attack? The ACLU has done this for the migrant workers. And these people think it's so great that the migrant workers are being screwed, won't think as much about that when they turn on them, because they protest the funds they don't get that they were getting. Maybe it's Medicaid, and then maybe it's Medicare, and then it's Social Security. It's the grant for the school that now no longer exists, the teachers that you could have, what they're taught, the inability of our children to compete with other children. It's a perfect storm where everything is wrong, and that favors a dictatorship, an autocracy. And that's what we have to fight against. So, I'm sorry if I went on a little bit. I want to wish you St. Patty's Day. Happy St. Patty's Day. Holly and I did find a restaurant. I got myself an Irish coffee. And then I got something with spuds. An Irishman knows his potatoes. I used to say when I was younger that I couldn't date a woman who didn't know how to make a good potato. Wasn't that crazy? I actually still think that. So I hope to talk to you tomorrow. Tomorrow it'll be very interesting to see what the judge says, because although he didn't show any emotion, his words were kind of that clipped, intense, this is what's going to happen next. You don't like my oral orders? I'm not going to give you one. I'm going to write it tomorrow, and you'll see what I say. That's what we need. By the way, this was a judge who handled high security matters. So when somebody tells him, oh, a word about the security of America, the person speaking doesn't know a millionth of what this gentleman knows because of his experience. And he was appointed to that position in charge of a special court involving this kind of material by no less than Chief Justice John Roberts. So I hope you're well. I hope you didn't overdo it on St. Patty's Day. I may have said this before, but my dad, when talking about people drinking on St. Patty's Day, the Irish cancer is always a concern. He said, that's a day for amateurs. So, there, in the back of my mind, I have to admit, I always wonder if there's that genetic origin in there. And since I was so interested in exercise and competing in sports and stuff like that, I never really exposed myself to that. So, hope to see you, and I say goodbye from my my sound booth in my basement. I suppose that's what it is, although you can hear all the sounds. Talk to you. Bye-bye.